Hi everyone. Welcome to Secrets Behind the Stars. All the details are in our video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share our video before continuing. Thank you so much for being here. The entertainment world held its breath again tonight, watching a scene that felt more like a scripted finale than real life. Barış Baktas, whose whirlwind love life has dominated the gossip cycle in recent weeks, made a move no one saw coming, turning a fraught chapter with Yağmur into something brimming with possibility. After a stretch of rumors, distance, and quiet tension, everything converged last night inside a buzzing Istanbul hotspot, where the noise of clinking glasses gave way to whispers the moment they arrived. The evening started with a careful plan. Barış came first, deliberately and alone, walking in with a calm, determined energy. He kept his head down, acknowledged friends with a nod, and chose a table tucked away from the center. It was as though he'd decided to stop letting speculation tell their story and finally write a piece of it himself. Minutes later, when Yağmur stepped through the doorway, the atmosphere changed. That instant, the room's chatter dropped an octave and the cameras near the entrance seemed to adjust themselves all at once. Phones were raised. Heads turned. The online world took notice instantly. Then came the moment that felt like a movie. Barış stood, met her halfway, and reached for her hand like he'd been rehearsing the gesture all day. They spoke quietly. It wasn't long, just enough to steady the air between them. And then the twist everyone had argued about, posted about, and speculated about seemed to resolve itself in a single breath. The ring that had been the subject of so much fuss returned to its place. It slid back to Yağmur, not with a grand speech, but with a look that carried both apology and promise. It was simple, but the room absorbed it like a shockwave. There was a pause before the murmurs, before the flashes, before the surge online. A pause where it felt like the two of them finally heard only each other. Sources near their circle say they couldn't hide their relief. Even if they tried, their faces gave it away. The moment had intimacy written all over it, like a curtain had quietly lowered around them in a room full of curious eyes. Photos and clips, shaky and raw, started flooding feeds within minutes. Fans who had argued in comment sections, who had made timelines and theories, found themselves gasping anyway. Many took it as a sign that the wall between them had been taken apart brick by brick, and that something steadier could be built in its place after a wrenching pause. This wasn't their first storm. The roller coaster between Barış and Yağmur has lived in the headlines for weeks, every hint and silence turned into a headline, every small gesture reframed and magnified. But last night's exchange landed like a banner of hope, a defiant mid-scene pivot that people could actually see. Rather than slipping out separately, as they'd done on other nights when tensions were high, they chose to leave together, a choice as clear as any statement. Commentators who thrive on reading the tea leaves of celebrity romance nodded knowingly. This is how trust begins to be rebuilt, gesture by sincere gesture. Returning the ring wasn't just romantic theater. It felt like a vow remade in public, and a signal that promises would be tended more carefully now. The evening grew denser and more charged as it unfolded. Not in a chaotic way, but with the intensity of two people choosing to be serious about each other under the brightest lights imaginable. Guests who approached their table were met with gentle but unmistakable signals that tonight was for them, not everyone else. They moved to a quieter corner, where the music softened and the clatter of plates dimmed. Seated side by side, they had the posture of people who needed to revisit things left half-said, moments that slipped through before either of them fully felt them. At times, the emotions reached Yağmur's eyes, a sheen that said the last few weeks had weighed more than anyone knew. Through it all, Barış kept his voice low and his attention fixed. He didn't look away, and he didn't interrupt. Observers noted that it didn't feel like a fight. It felt like two people choosing to understand rather than win. After the ring found its way back to her hand, he laced his fingers with hers in that quiet corner, and that simple hold became an unmistakable boundary between them and everyone else. A few brave souls tried to intrude with a laugh, a greeting, a request for a selfie. Barış was cordial but firm, guiding the moment back to the two of them while the staff helped keep a respectful perimeter. A private island in a crowded sea. That was the energy at their table. On Yagmur's face, an unsure smile grew more certain, like a heavy storyline had finally eased its grip. The journalist crowd outside, hearing whispers of what was happening inside, shifted into high alert. Cameras re-angled. Posts and live streams erupted with guesses. "Is this the piece we've been waiting for?" read a caption that ricocheted across platforms. Within the venue, a ripple of awareness moved from table to table. A little later, as they rose and drifted through the room, the collective gaze followed. The moment that turned a hush into applause came when Yagmur slipped her arm around Barış in an easy, unhurried way. It was small, but the message was enormous. "We're here, we're together, we're not hiding." Those nearby described the look in their eyes as quietly resolute, like two people who had decided to be done with coded messages and let action do the talking. Trust doesn't rebuild itself. You show up for it. When they finally headed out, the doorway turned into a theater. Lights flashed so intensely that they had to pause for a second to gather themselves. In that chaos, the way Barış moved, guiding Yagmur with a protective hand, clearing a path without pushing, said everything. They wore that particular mix of startle and joy that appears when a decision you feared turns out to be the right one. And then there was the detail no one could miss. The ring, gleaming without any attempt to hide it. Not tucked under a sleeve. Not slipped into a pocket. On her hand, like a headline that didn't need words. Those frames, taken under harsh lights in a cold night sky, will live for a long time in the archives of glossy talk shows and late-night gossip chats. It became almost undeniable. Two young stars, freshly reunited after a stretch of complicated silences, had chosen not to surrender to the noise. As the car doors closed, the last image the lenses caught was almost tender in its ordinariness, the two of them leaning lightly into each other, shoulders aligned, as if the simplest way forward was to share the same small space and breathe together. It was a promise written in posture. Inside the car, the crowd's hum turned into a distant vibration. It was cold outside, but inside the cabin the air seemed soft, altered by the relief of finally saying the right words at the right time. The driver pulled into traffic, and the city's pulse took over, lights skating across the windows. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, Yagmur let her breath move without catching. She settled back, closing her eyes for a second, like she could finally set down a weight she'd been carrying in both hands. Barış watched her quietly, gaze steady, trying not to rush the calm that was just beginning to settle. He was the first to speak. He didn't need a speech. One line was enough, a gentle murmur that filled the space between them. "You never deserved what that became," he said, each word chosen, a mix of regret and certainty. She turned, surprised by the softness and the conviction in his tone. The apology wasn't just an apology, it was an acknowledgement, the kind that makes your shoulders drop because you can tell it's not for the cameras. Something in her expression changed, as if a door that had been stuck finally moved on its hinges. The car traced a familiar route along the Bosphorus, the water on their right flickering like a reel of film. They spoke in a way they hadn't in a long time, unspooling feelings neither of them had wanted to set down in public. Yagmur described how the whispers had drained her, how the quiet judgments and the loud ones tangled together until she didn't know which to answer. She told him there were nights she chose silence because any defense would have sounded like noise. He listened without getting defensive, nodding when she needed him to, reaching over when the words required a hand, staying still when stillness felt like the right kind of care. They pulled over at a deserted curve of the shore, the kind of spot where city lights look like strings of stars and the wind tastes like salt and rain. For a while, they didn't talk. They simply watched the water, both of them wrapped in the same quiet. The kind of pause that turns two people back into a pair. The kind you can't stage. Eventually, they found their way back into conversation, this time lighter, punctured with half-smiles that hadn't appeared in weeks. At one point, the streetlight caught the ring and sent a speck of light dancing across the ceiling. Yagmur glanced down, twisted it gently between her fingers, and looked at him with a tiny, teasing curve at the edge of her mouth. "Tell me," she said, the calm in her voice new and steady, "what made you place it back on my hand so suddenly?" The question hung in the warm air of the car, both playful and serious. He sighed, then laughed in a way that sounded relieved. He said he was tired of letting an object become a battleground instead of a promise. He said he realized he wanted the world to see him choosing her, in real time, without a cryptic caption. He admitted that fear had turned simple moments into complicated ones, and that he didn't want that version of them anymore. Her eyes softened. The edges around their story started to blur, like ink in water finding its shape again. Back inside the venue, earlier, insiders said the energy around them had shifted from curiosity to respect. The staff had shielded the table like old friends, ushering away over-enthusiastic admirers with a smile and a shake of the head. Some claimed they saw tears, others swore it was laughter. Maybe it was both. Either way, something mended right there under low light and a dozen bouquets placed strategically around the room. Online, the narrative raced ahead of them. Threads popped up tallying the timeline. "She's wearing it again," one post announced triumphantly. "He finally did the right thing," another replied. There were endless theories. That the ring had been a symbol under dispute, that it had been tucked away for safekeeping, that it signaled a new level of commitment. Whatever the backstory, the visible outcome cut right through the noise. The two of them, together, choosing the simplest way to be clear. By the time the night wound down, the story felt bigger than a ring or a venue or a set of photos. It felt like a reminder that the truth of a relationship is shaped by small choices repeated over time. Experts chimed in, as they always do, pointing out that gestures like this rebuild a sense of safety, that public acts of care conceal private vows. Others argued it was a savvy move in a media age. Either way, the message landed: love stumbles sometimes, but it can steady itself when people step toward each other without flinching. They didn't hide at the end. They didn't sprint past the cameras. They let themselves be seen walking out side by side, in step. Was it strategic? Maybe. Was it sincere? It looked like it. And maybe that's what mattered most in that moment, that what they felt showed up on their faces, and that the world, for once, could read the scene without a decoder. Inside the car, after the shore and the quiet and the questions, they eased back into the city's rhythm. The conversation turned to simple things. Plans to eat breakfast without phones, promises to make space for days without headlines, jokes about unplugging everything and vanishing to the coast. He asked her what she needed right now. She answered honestly: patience, laughter, and a little more time to believe the calm was real. He agreed, said he could do that. Said he wanted to do that. When they finally pulled up to their destination, they didn't spring into motion. They sat a minute longer, letting the night finish itself. Outside, a few cameras still lingered, waiting for one more shot. But the most important image had already been captured: the two of them, steady, a ring where it belonged, and an agreement written not in ink but in the way their shoulders loosened when the other spoke. So, that's where the night closed, not with fireworks, but with a reclaimed quiet that belonged to them. Whatever comes next will surely keep the conversation going, but for now, it's enough to say that last night wasn't a rumor. It was a choice, lived out in front of everyone and also only between two people. And it was enough to make even the loudest skeptics pause. This brings us to the end of our video. If you enjoyed our video, please subscribe to Secrets Behind the Stars and share it. Goodbye.